Welcome back to Profluent Sports. We have another great one today with my man Karim Kassam. He is leading the AI and analytics at Teamworks, who's coming off a massive raise as well. So, Karim, appreciate you coming on and excited to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Nice to meet you, Andrew. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Always great to have another Yinzer on. For those of you that don't know, Shady Side representing Karim, Permani's brothers. I always throw this out. We had the CEO on not long ago. That was one of my cool one. But you gotta, what's your go-to there, Karim?
My go-to right now is Soba. It's part of that big burrito Mad Mex chain that's been around forever. They have a lot of good restaurants.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, underrated city. But that ties into your background a little bit as well. Why don't you give us the high low on that? Obviously, the Steelers. I'm a Steelers fan. I'm not sure if you are full into the black and yellow, waving my terrible towels over here. I won't go grab it, but uh, you know, you have some of a football background, obviously analytics, AI. So if you want to give us the high level 1-2 minutes, then we can roll into the broader combo.
Yeah, absolutely. Still a Steelers fan. I was at Latrobe St. Vincent College visiting the folks at training camp last week. My background, undergraduate engineering. I did a master's in computer science, AI. AI before was cool a long time ago. From there, when I was doing that, I was looking at how people make decisions and try to model it in computers, and the people think side was just super interesting to me. So I did a PhD in psychology at Harvard, studying how emotions and thinking, cognition come together to make decisions. Went from Boston to Pittsburgh to become faculty at Carnegie Mellon and was tenure track faculty for 4 years, but then got in touch with Steelers ownership, a guy by the name of Thomas Tull, minority owner. He's a big Steeler fan and a baseball fan. He kind of saw these trends in analytics in 2014, and so he asked me to kind of be the first data scientist in kind of modern era in the Steelers building, and was there for 5 years in the draft room watching film with scouts and coaches and players every day, working with Mike Tomlin on game prep, especially with the defense there. So there for 5 years, 1 year with the Twins, managing R&D in baseball, big group of 20 people, and then back to football as an exec with the Jaguars before joining Zelus Analytics, which was acquired by Teamworks about a year ago now.
Super cool. How have you seen the football analytics evolve over time? And then obviously, you went from working, and this isn't not the right comparison at all, but I kind of view it a little bit of like working for the public sector, then going to the private sector. And it's not like a true one-to-one comparison of like government to private, but like I view the larger sports organizations like a Steelers or a Twins as like, that's a little bit more of your older legacy and running into the private side with Zealous and what you're doing there. What have you seen on that side of things?
Yeah, it's they're kind of different. I think, like as you're saying, analytics isn't new to football. It's been around for a long time. I think it's just evolving really quickly in the same way that AI and data science have been evolving across industries. And what we see with the data is it feels like every 5 years there's 10 times, 100 times more data. And when you take that and you have the right team to analyze it, the computer with the right training can really see how players are moving on the field, and not just how fast they are, but what's their change of direction, how are they collapsing the pocket, how are they creating space in the run game. At a high level, we can do some of this objective measurement now in a way that really scales across teams, and that transition from team side to teamworks, it makes a lot of sense for data science in some ways. You see, like the biggest baseball teams have these 40, 50 person R&D groups, and they do it because it's worth it for them. Like they're getting ROI from them. At the same time, not every football team, not every baseball team, not every hockey team is going to do that. And so we're solving those same problems that teams are doing, but we do it with a elite group of people in house, and we can do it more efficiently in a way that economically makes more sense for teams as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And how have you seen that evolve, I guess, from even a product lens? You hear a lot of vibe coding even now. And obviously, you got a huge team. If you want to touch on that a little bit at Teamworks, you're putting a lot of attention and resources and personnel towards it. I think you guys are calling it like the Teamworks Intelligence Team. And there's like, I don't know, some crazy number of PhDs and on there. So maybe touch on that side, but then also just where this analytics and AI has evolved from and where it's going over the next couple years as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, Zelus Analytics that is now Teamworks Intelligence. That's that crazy group with PhDs. I think of it as like the Bell Labs for sports analytics, or the Skunk Works, or the Manhattan Project. Over the last 5 years, if you looked at like who are the strongest sports analysts in the world, whether they're people on teams or professors. Something like half of them have been at Teamworks Intelligence. Yeah, 25 PhDs. A lot of folks like me that have led R&D groups across sports, and I think it's really that combination of having that team side of experience and then that technical expertise that lets us sort of create tools that can have a lot of impact, and that's what lets us work across 5 different sports today. Yeah, so AI, we've been doing it a long time. Solutions are everywhere now. There's definitely some snake oil out there. And we just really want to be thoughtful in how we build that tech and use those technologies. I think if you ask like a standard LLM, you ask ChatGPT about football X's and O's, it's terrible. It's pretty bad. Like if you start asking what are the pluses and minuses of cover two man? Like everything else, it'll tell you it knows, and it'll spout nonsense. So, we have that team that can bring AI to football on the field and also to basketball on the court and hockey on the ice and soccer on the pitch and baseball at the park, all of those things. And those all work together that allow us to, harness some of these technologies, not vibe coding yet, not quite there. But we're building out interfaces. We're building a lot of tools and models to understand player movement, to understand how to deploy players, how to manage and maximize talent, how to acquire talent in scouting. We're building it out across sports. Um, I think it's a really exciting time to be in sports tech and data science.
I agree. And an interesting case study across this is last year, there were more players that entered the transfer portal than the total number on NFL rosters. So obviously, this is going to continue to increase in the college football world. And as that commercializes more and more and professionalizes as well, it will become a massive, quite possibly one of the largest sports leagues in the world itself, depending on how that all works out over the next couple of years with legislation and whatever. But, give us a little rundown onto that. I know for your scouting solution at Teamworks, you're doing a lot to help assist in the transfer portal because of how much movement there is year to year now.
Yeah, yeah. Like you're saying, the professionalization is happening so quickly. It's chaotic. It's like harder than being professional in a lot of ways because the rules are changing and budgets are changing and there's all these other pressures on schools. In a lot of ways, I think it is harder. From the scouting side, definitely I think at the college level, a lot of times it is a lot harder for colleges to do the same work when you have that many players in the transfer portal. If you think about it, I think the average NFL team probably has about a dozen scouts to scout college. And those 12 scouts are only going to look at draft eligible players. They're going to ignore FCS mostly altogether. And they're going to know everyone that they need to evaluate a year in advance. And colleges, like even big SEC schools, some of them will have like 4 scouts. So the third of the scouts, they probably have 5 to 10x the number of players they need to evaluate. They have less time. And when, sometimes transfer portal teams might know who guys are going to be before they go in, but sometimes like guy drops in the portal and you got an hour to make a decision. And so colleges can't do scouting the same way that they've been doing it for a long time. Some things have to change. We just got back from Nashville and talking to a lot of GMs there about, their challenges and obviously they're seeing all of this and they're looking for ways of like how can we find talent faster? How can we, manage and maximize that talent? And how can we deploy that talent better? And teamworks with our personnel kind of performance and coaching categories. We're solving those problems. We're solving those same problems that every sports team in football and other sports are solving. And we're creating an ecosystem to solve those problems and to have a unified solution. Because no one really wants like, all right, I can go to 6 different places to do something, really to put that all in one place, have it be excellent quality, but also like really integrated.
Yeah, and what are the main things that some of these GMs are looking for, or the scouts as well? Like, what are some of these analytics that are higher prioritized? I'm sure, like obviously, how much players want from a dollar amount is a big factor, but taking that out more from the performance analytics side, what are they looking at, and how are they? I mean, an hour to make a decision on a player is it would seem tough in the old world, but again, with these tools, maybe not so much anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I think, so the way we model our software is very much from our front office experience. So like mine with Kevin Colbert in Pittsburgh, and like every year he had a big draft book and he'd say, these are the traits we want you to rate for every position. And so you can imagine for an edge rusher, for a pass rusher, it's how for everyone it's size and speed and character. but it's also going to be like how well does he bend and change direction? How good are his pass rush moves? How stout is he against the run? How well can he cover? And what our models do essentially is cover as many of those as possible. So for edge rushers now, we can say kind of how well are they collapsing the pocket. And with the amount of data that's out there with the AI, one of the hard things about football, unlike baseball, where a lot of the game is one-on-one. It's that pitcher and the batter. In football, it's always 22 guys. And so, like even stats like sacks and pressures, it depends on what TJ Watt is doing, but it also depends on Cam Hayward. It depends on the secondary. It depends on the quarterback, and we're able to decontextualize a lot of that and to give a really good objective measure of that individual's trait along that dimension. The other thing that I think is like really special about football relative to other sports is that different teams are asking their players to do very different things. That if I'm playing third base for the Yankees, and I'm worth 2.5 wins above replacement, it's the same if I'm at the Pirates or I'm at the Red Sox or Dodgers or anywhere else. In football, someone's going to be asking their tight ends mostly to block. Someone's going to ask them rarely to block and just go out and run routes, free safeties and strong safeties, slot wideouts, wide wideouts. And so they really need this trait-based approach really is helpful because it doesn't tell you just sort of like how good is this guy in a vacuum. It tells you more how good is this guy going to be on your team. And as fans, we focus a lot on the stars, but especially when you get beyond the stars and you get beyond the starters, it's those traits. Like this player has this trait that can help him win. That's what's going to make him valuable. So we're delivering objective measures on all of those traits across positions. And then when a scouting department has, in December, 200 players in that dropped in the portal, they can quickly look at our system and say like, all right, these are the guys that look like they would fit with our scheme, with what our coaches are going to ask them to do. And then importantly, with Teamwork's recent acquisition of telemetry sports, we have a UI for football that's already trusted by the NFL, and we can take our traits and back it up with film. So you don't have to even trust, our PhDs on what they say about this guy's pass rush ability. We'll give you that number, and then we'll give you a bunch of clips that backs it up of why it gets there. And so for a scout, rather than start from scratch with 200 players, they can quickly sort, say, hey, these are the guys we need to deep dive on. And at the end of the day, in football buildings, everyone's going to make decisions based on that film. They can find that film faster, they can vet faster, and really focus those position coaches that are doubling as scouts, all of that extra work that happens at the college level, they can deploy that efficiently and really make decisions much faster.
Yeah, it's cool to hear. And I know you haven't probably done analytics on every sport, but do you have a sport that would be the easiest to build out full analytics for versus sports that are the hardest to build analytics for?
That's yeah. That's a really good question. In some ways, baseball is easier because it's just two observations. But what's happened with baseball is that it's very competitive, and and the teams are solving that batter pitcher matchup in a really sophisticated way, and their data is getting bigger and bigger to the point where like for everyone on MLB field, you don't know just where that player is, you know where all the joints are. And so to optimize swings and do all that. So I think like to break in and say something interesting about baseball, it makes sense that baseball was sort of first as part of this Moneyball revolution because it's easier to get started, but now it's sort of competitive and like hard to get there. Football, on the other hand, like there's a lot of it's hard to get started on stuff, right? Because every play is 22 players and Russian coverage work together, and it's hard to evaluate a quarterback without knowing who the receivers are and all of that. So it's definitely I think football is hard that way. I work with the hockey team as well. Hockey ends up being really hard because it's on skates. And so movement just looks really different, and it's a lot faster than it is anywhere else. So like every sport has their challenges, I think. But football, that interdependence is a big thing. Basketball as well. That interdependence there is in basketball. Say football has nice thing that it's broken into plays. Basketball and hockey continuous make for an additional challenge as well. But I think they're all challenging in different ways. And yeah, there's plus and minus working on any of them.
Yeah, it's quite interesting and something I think about a lot. Just as analytics and AI and machine learning and everything gets better, is there a point where like truly all the best players in the world get to like the professional level or where they're supposed to be, right? You see it a little bit more in college, but like I know players that just for whatever reason, like I thought they were better than others, but they didn't make, they went D3 or D2, and then other kids that I didn't think were as good went D1. And I'm just curious from an analytics perspective, again, there's some preference. There's things that sort of make that a little. But do you believe there's a time, or do you believe there's any sports where like truly the best players are always making it, or will that always be imperfect? Or I guess just sort of leaving that open ended. Like, what do you think about that point?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always like thinking about that for some reason.
I think it'll always be imperfect, or like at least, it's hard to predict. Technology's changing so fast, but like in the next 5 to 10 years, it's still going to be imperfect. I think we're getting more. I think we're getting more efficient with it. I think the better players are ending up on the best teams. I think the better players are more and more going to Division One with professionalization of college sports. Like you have to have these broad scouting departments. You have more and more schools that are recruiting beyond locally because they have to, and that kind of helps things be more efficient. There are, yeah, this as an athlete, like beyond the athletic talent, there's the character, there's the fit stuff, and like some of those preferences come in, and some of them, they need to come in. At the end, it's like it's a team, and I think sometimes folks that haven't worked in sports, they, we treat the players like we would treat fantasy, but at the end of the day, a player that is, 80 or 90% as talented, but is like a better fit, is a better locker room guy. A lot of times, like that's the guy that's going to make you a championship team. And so there's some inefficiencies that end up with like with that mindset bit, with the development bit, and with like idiosyncrasies of like the coaches and GMs that are making choices. Like they're just hard decisions, and they're not always going to be perfect.
What have you seen? You've been in a few different pro sports organizations. What makes they're all different, right? And I do believe a lot is top down. Like you got to have the best players to win, but you just start to see like why certain organizations are always doing well versus others that aren't. What's the balance of like they have good management versus also they have good tech, right? Like how do you see that continuing to merge and mesh because they both are playing increasing factors?
Yeah, yeah. I think at the end of the day of like who ends up winning championships, it comes down to players, right? Like every coach is going to say that, every GM is going to say that. It's going to come down to the players. Now, tech plays an important role in like finding and deploying those players. I have a group chat with some Steelers that were there when I'm there, and they're always like, "It's the players. It's like it's not the coaches. The coaches are babysitters. It's the players." There is a lot of truth to it. Like at the end of the day, like the players win championships, but you still got to find them. And as we were talking about earlier, now you got to find them. And in college sports, you got to find the ones that are a good deal. You got to, you can't afford all of the 5 stars and leave them on your bench because someone else is going to pay those guys. You got to find players that are talented, that have all that good character stuff, and are going to be able to fit your team. And tech just makes that a lot easier. You can throw a lot of manpower at it. You can kind of try to do it the way NFL teams are doing it with just like a lot of scouts, but there's so many players in the transfer portal. You can't watch all of them. Like it's just impossible to do it that way, or not impossible, but expensive. And teams are going away from those types of solutions.
Yeah. What's getting you excited then on two fronts? Number one, like the teamworks front, some like products or anything you're working on or things that are getting you excited. Then number two, just from a broader sports perspective, what's got you excited or you're just diving, leaning more into, you think it's interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a sports perspective, I'm excited. Like a lot of people, football season's about to start, college game and pro game is starting. There's a lot of really interesting storylines, I think, in at both levels. Teamworks wise, that when we were acquired, the football folks in particular were really excited. We were working with 5 NFL teams at that time. Now we just sort of soft launched a beta scouting intelligence program, and we'll be working with 20 college teams starting this month. And so like the impact that we can have, what we can do across football, across levels now with the support and the talent that was already at Teamworks is a big deal. And then the other thing is really exciting for us is that this acquisition of telemetry sports, when you combine the metrics that we've been building for the last 5 years with our NFL partners, with the UI that telemetry has, with the data that they can provide, and combine it, now like you can really speak the language. One thing that happens is as that data has kind of grown to this level where we can track players over the last 5 years is really the first time I think in football where analysts and coaches and scouts could speak the same language. Like the in play by play stats, if before 2018 or so, football analytics Twitter will be talking about expected points added per play and yards per route run. These are all really good stats. But if you're going into a draft process or a free agent process, it's hard to communicate those with, a set of coaches and scouts that don't have context for it, and they have they're amazing at what they do. They're amazing at like watching athletic talent and seeing athletic talent, so that just added a lot of friction. But now we can talk about change of direction and burst off the line of scrimmage, and we can talk about speed and hands and things like that, and being able to do that and combine it with the film from telemetry, where now we're really speaking the language that is the communication medium in football building. So here we see this player. This is how the computer sees the player, and we can bring it straight to you in a cut up and have it in your hands in seconds. That's super exciting for us.
Yeah, and how are you guys meshing or merging, or how do you guys work at Teamworks across all your different products? Because obviously, it's been very much a buy versus build company, and so when you bring in your football side, and then you have you're talking about all these different solutions. How do you guys? Where's sort of the interchange, or how are you making sure you're all on the same page across that as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. A nice thing about Teamworks, because they have acquired companies, that being good at integrating is something that they figured out. And so all of our teams drop in, our company drops in. There's some changes that we don't need to make right away. And then some degree there are integrations that our customers are going to want right away, and we know what to prioritize. So there are recruiting communications, and that has to speak with the scouting intelligence platform. You want to know, who are the best players, and in the same place, you want to be able to communicate with them and message them and talk about them with the rest of your scouting staff and your coaching staff, and have all of that sort of work together. So I think we've been very thoughtful about bringing in companies and finding those first integrations that we can, without trying to go too fast in some other area, and doing something that like hurts the product in the short term for a long-term gain. I think we've been able to get the best of both worlds by really just prioritizing, finding these great companies, one that already have a user base that are fans of that tech, and then finding those integration points that are going to solve customer pain points effectively, and really attacking them as fast as we can.
Yeah, and that was going to be my follow up. You touched on it briefly, but then how are you evaluating new companies? Obviously, you guys just had another fundraise, so I'm sure. Again, this is just me speculating, but based off past history, I would assume that it's probably closer to the truth than not. But you're probably looking at more companies to potentially buy and bring in and use as your solution. So how do you guys keep an eye on the market as well, not just your customers, but to see like, hey, here's another one I think we could really use. How are you guys managing that side of things?
Yeah. That's a great question. I don't think the acquisitions are going away anytime soon. Kyle Charters, our CFO, kind of, he does a lot, leads a lot of that work, and handles the financial. I've done some of the due diligence in the strategy around the acquisitions. Telemetry, who we just acquired, I was one of their first customers back in 2018, while I was with the Steelers. And so as we've grown and grown into this space, now we have a lot of people that have firsthand experience with these companies. So beyond kind of the data room and the financials, we have internal people, and we have connections with a lot of people that have worked with these companies over years, give a good sense of what is it like from a customer perspective, what is their support like, what is it like to interact with their people, how would we place them within the vendor ecosystem, because so many of us have sat on the other side. I think we're really well positioned to do that type of strategic evaluation as well.
And this was awesome, first Kareem, but we'll close it out here. Where can people learn more about the intelligence side of what you guys are doing, whether they're customers or just interested in learning more? Do you guys have like a certain spot on your website, or anywhere where you have more information on the intelligence or AI, or a lot of what you're working on?
Yeah, you can find it, if you go to teamworks.com. You will find the intelligence pretty quickly. If anyone's interested, I'll give you my email is kkassam, KKASSAM at teamworks.com. I'm happy to talk to folks about intelligence. It's an exciting space for me, and I'm happy to have these conversations.
Awesome. Well, yeah, really appreciate you coming on today. This has been a great conversation. We'll get it clipped up and rolled out for everyone. But yeah, I love what you guys are doing, and excited to see where we're at in a few years, pop you back on and see how crazy all this tech is moving. So it's cool to see you guys at the forefront of it.
Sounds great. I look forward to it. Thank you for having me, man.